What was the worst advice you have ever received?
Invest in brother-in-law's bar. Thanks dad. Bye bye 30K and bye bye bar. Did not know I'd be working alongside an illiterate buffoon. Don't study computer programming. The market is probably going to be saturated by the time you graduate. From a computer science professor in the mid-80s. My dad said to quit studying that IT stuff. If you want to be a network engineer or whatever, go to the company. Find the boss and ask to work as a janitor. Then you can work your way up. Thankfully I did not listen. At 24, while making $12 an hour and renting an apartment, my parents convinced me to buy a brand new Honda Accord. They assured me it was the only way to get a new car and that used ones broke down immediately. The payments were one entire paycheck of the two I got every month. My husband needed a medical card after his heart failure from viral cardiomyopathy. The social worker told me I should get pregnant so we would qualify for help with his medical costs. I was 24 and lived in Ohio. I was horrified. She listed all the help we could get if I could get pregnant. He was in an ICU ward recovering from heart surgery. I walked out of there just disgusted. In my early 20s, my stepdad encouraged us equals me, sister and brother, to max out our credit cards,
then file bankruptcy.
My sister did it. My brother did it. I didn't. He insulted me for years, for being stupid. From my father, don't go to the doctor's office if you only have one problem. Wait until you have 4 or 5. That's how you get the most bang for your buck. Family over friends. Because friends won't always be there for you. Family will. Fat load of crap that was. Me. I'm depressed and struggling with low 6 drive therapist. Haha, I have the opposite problem. But have you tried watching a rom-com? They always gets me in the mood. This is a direct quote.
Edit.
Thankful for all the replies. Haha, I am much better now and I found a different therapist. Turns out being bisexual and growing up Mormon made me really repressed sexually. The therapist was Mormon, so that didn't help. She was licensed and told me she had special training specifically in sex therapy. I've found an ex-Mormon therapist who thankfully undid the damage. Turn the other cheek. You'll have the moral high ground. My father, when I told him about how I was being badly bullied. Thanks dad. For making my school days an even bigger ordeal than they already were. Invest in DVDs because you can pawn them for cash when you need money. Just find a girl you don't like. Once you get married you'll just hate her anyways. God. I hope he was joking. Was told by a sailor of 5 decades that the best way to get rid of a sunburn is to take the hottest shower possible. Not only did that cause immeasurable pain, but didn't help in the slightest. If you go work somewhere else no one will pay you as much as me. My dad. I'm currently making twice as much plus benefits. Edit. Wording I make twice as much plus benefits originally had not including benefits. Not me, but I remember reading a thread about a man who told his girlfriend every day that she stinks. She washed 2 or 3 times daily, tried everything she could to get rid of this smell, until she cracked and started screaming at him asking WTF was he smelling. Apparently his father told him, tell a woman she smells every day and she'll be constantly clean. He just took that as normal good advice to live by. To file for bankruptcy over a $2,500 car loan. Edit. I've been informed that I should have said, declare bankruptcyyyy. Instead. Never change. It's too late for you to learn to code. I was 14. As a temporary measure, it's okay to insert a copper penny into a screw in fuse box circuit until replacement fuses can be obtained. That dangerous advice almost caused a house fire due to an overheating circuit. If you actually cared about being organized you wouldn't have ADHD. If you run out of dishwasher detergent, just substitute it with regular dish soap, a big mistake that will only be made once. All you have to do is prove to the woman that you are better than the man she is with and she will come running. From a former manager who had 7 girlfriends, and a wife, who stabbed him when she learned about the girlfriends. To keep my mouth shut, never argue or talk back to my partner. Put some butter on it. My father to me directly after getting a 3rd-degree burn on my arm. Cooking accident. Ignore the bullies. They just want a reaction. If you ignore them they'll get bored and leave you alone. This is my answer every time this question pops up. It is such unmitigated bullshit. The adults who gave me this advice, when I was a kid, in the 70s, must have had softer bullies than I did. Because yeah, my bullies wanted a reaction, and they'd keep going until they got one. Note, they considered tears of pain and blood a reaction, as they beat the crap out of me. Don't take IT engineering cause it's saturated. Follow your heart. Sometimes my heart is stupid and I should listen to my brain instead. Just ignore your bully. Just get a degree. It doesn't matter which one. $40. and one unused degree later. My grandmother told me that if I wanted to stop being poor, I should find a job in logistics or warehousing. I was literally managing a warehouse at the time. Worst advice received and acted upon. My friend out of high school got a job at Ford starting at $28 per hour full-time and in the UAW. His mom said he shouldn't waste his life working at a factory and go to college despite him having a 1.8 GPA in high school and very good with working with his hands.
He quit.
Took 2 classes at college and dropped out. He spent the next 8 years making pizza because the job market was trash. Edit this as a lot of comments and upvotes. If Dave sees this high. Winners never quit. I think that is horrible advice. Calculated quitting is how you progress in life. If I never quit, I would be stuck in bad situations. Enjoy your life when you're in school. It's going downhill from there. Don't ever say that to a depressed teenager. As an adult, my life is so much better. Replace all your office computers with Macs. Then you don't need to set up network drives because you can use iCloud instead. Don't worry about less than industry-specific software we pay for greater than. There'll be something in the App Store you can replace it with. A mobile home is a great first home for a young couple. I wish I had looked into it more. When my company imploded, I was stuck with a $1,000 mortgage payment and $1,100 monthly space rent in the Los Angeles area. I got a job out of state. Could not sell the mobile home park. Residents were giving up their old paid-off homes just to get out of their leases. And the park was selling the houses for $500. That is an exact figure. So no one wanted a brand new house in the same park. I had to just give up the house to the bank. Bank eventually sold it for less than half of the loan balance. My credit recovered $710 years later. Lawyer said I should just admit that I did it. I denied it and the case was dismissed. Both of my parents taught my brother and I that so long as someone wasn't married that they were basically single. My parents never went a year of their marriage without cheating on each other, and my brother and I never actually got to learn what a healthy relationship looked like. So naturally he and I have struggled in our relationships with SOs all our lives. To this day I haven't had a single relationship where I have felt like I could trust the other person, and have myself been cheated on multiple times by lovers that said they weren't like my parents. I'm in my 30s now and for the sake of my mental and emotional health have sworn off relationships for the foreseeable future because I cannot bring myself to see anything but future problems. You might as well quit high school and take this job opening at the mill. My dad. To bottle up my feelings and not go to therapy. Now, at 46, I'm finally going to therapy. Dealing with the fact I may have lost my marriage, and struggling to deal with all the crap that I have bottled up my entire life. Go to frocking therapy. Deal with the crap and feelings that you don't want to look at. It's worth it. On Twitter, find yourself a man who will email you when you block him. Alternatively, find someone who isn't a melodramatic pain in the ass. I was learning programming when I was like 10. I made many toy programs in QuickBasic. When I approached someone I admired to ask about learning C, he told me that I wouldn't get it because pointers were hard. I was so upset I never ever came near C and only learned other easier programming languages. When I finally got over it and tried C like 15 years later, I realized that this guy was just an idiot. Letting myself get scared by this moron was one of the worst mistakes I made in my life. Go to college and get a degree. Any degree. Doesn't matter what it is. They'll hire you with a bachelor's degree and no experience. If you don't have a college degree, you're going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's and living under a bridge for the rest of your life. And you are not going to a trade school. Trade schools are for stupid people. My parents, teachers, and guidance counselors in the 90s. If you ignore them, they'll leave you alone. I was constantly bullied at school, and one time, I ignored the kids who bullied me for 3 whole weeks. Big surprise. They didn't leave me alone. I told my family I was going to file for divorce because my ex-husband was abusive. My Mormon aunt wrote me a 3-page revelation from God, instructing me to quit my successful career and get pregnant as quickly as possible. The women had 13 kids. Misery loves company, I guess. Monica Lewinsky is the permanent winner of this question. Emo. When it came up on Twitter a few years ago, she submitted, "A White House internship will look great on your resume." Edit. Corrected spelling of name. Don't get out of the military. You're giving up a good retirement and the most stable career path, plus benefits. Those frockers try and gaslight the shit out of you. Believe in yourself and your work ethic and you're going to be fine. I make more now than I would have if I stayed in, and I get to see my family every day. Glad I did it, but glad I didn't take that advice. Calling children's rights in society and just wanting to talk about how harsh my dad was being. THX dad, still kinda frocked up by your parenting. And them telling me that parents are supposed to be harsh and if I just try a little harder things would be better. Result. Spent a lot of years trying harder. Nothing was ever good enough though. My dad pulled me aside and told me that, your 10-year high school reunion is coming up. Your classmates are going to ask what you've been doing. You might want to think about what you're going to tell them. I wasn't planning on going to, and did not go to, my 10-year high school reunion. Why my dad was so concerned with the opinions of people I haven't seen in over a decade, I have no idea. You might as well marry him. You're practically married now. My mom. Marriage lasted 28 months and cost me $20 to get out of. Good things come to those who wait. Nah, good things come to those who go out and take them. When I went to university I could choose between two major, engineering or language. Being an Asian kid, most of my family, friends, relatives and even teachers recommended engineering, because it's a men's job. Translator or interpreter are for girls, so I let myself be convinced and picked engineering although I sucked at maths. Fast forward 8 years now, I'm a low-level worker at a manufacturing plant because I dropped out of uni not being able to keep up with the stress. The irony is that my main job now is to translate email and document for my boss who could barely speak English. I'm a special education teacher for students with behavioral and emotional disabilities. In teaching, there's a narrative, don't smile until Christmas, pretty much meaning you have to be a hard-ass until Christmas to get your kids to respect you. I heard this constantly from my mentor teachers during student teaching. Now I know it's the farthest thing from the truth. My kids, hopefully, know that my class is a safe space and that I love them. Even when they have bad days, they always leave me knowing that someone cared about them and was happy to see them that day. Take care of everyone else's needs before your own. That way you're never being selfish. I find that to be a very manipulative form of advice. I take care of myself first, then everyone else. You don't want to burn bridges. Frock that. Some of those bridges need to be bombed so they are never able to be crossed again by either party. If someone is starving to death, don't give them any food, or you will be interfering with God's will. Don't ever go to a psychiatrist. In fact, if you take meds they prescribe, you're actually no longer sober. The double A mentality that almost killed me. Edit. Since folks want to know about the program that did help me get sober, Colmac.com, it's obviously very specific to a geography, but I'd recommend searching outpatient addiction plus your location to start. Don't ever give up, quit. Sometimes you just have to accept that it's not going to happen and you are wasting time that could be spent pursuing a better option or direction. Bro, you want to lose some weight real fast without doing too much? Smoke a tiny bit of crack. Not too much but just a little bit. I have fucking never exhaled so goddamn hard through my nose. This asshole genuinely with no sarcasm or satire in his voice was like, yeah man, it'll be a couple weeks but that's it. If you want I'll monitor you. Go to ITT Tech. Show your employer loyalty and they will be loyal to you. Your bullies will get bored and leave you alone if you just don't give them a reaction. 1. Frock that victim-blaming nonsense. 2. This never frocking worked. Ever. It only made the torment worse until they finally got a reaction and then they just knew to escalate until I broke down. This shit got dangerous. These kids were vicious. They never tried touching me again after I punched one of them in the nose though. Violence doesn't solve everything but sometimes an asshole only listens to a bigger asshole. My own mother told me that depression and anxiety are normal feelings for every 20-something-year-old and the therapist would just put me on some pill and turn me into a junkie. Don't fight back. Just curl up until he's done. As an ADHD person, just pay attention. The more responsibility you take on the more the company will see how much of an asset you are. Got passed up for a hiring by someone that did the bare minimum but kissed more ass and then proceeded to get laid off 3 weeks later. Go to college immediately after high school even if you have no idea what you want to do. Don't worry because things will be better in heaven. I was actively suicidal and in between hospital stays for it. You're married now. You have to stick it out. He's doing it because he likes you. It'll do you good for someone popular to be interested in you. Thanks teacher for giving him the green light to sexually harass and ultimately assault me on school property during school time. And because boys will be boys. He encouraged his friends to do the same. Betrayed by those in authority and some of my own friends. You want make sure the man you're in a relationship with is way more into you than you are into him. My gold-digging breach of a stepmom. When I was trying to quit drinking, a counselor told me to try expensive wine and savor it. That was an expensive week. Close to 16 years sober now. I got through it, but that was the worst advice from a professional I've ever gotten. Also, follow your heart. Really bugs me. Just get married and have babies. Don't drop out of culinary school. You're such a great cook. Take it from me, culinary school is a total waste of time. Employers throw away resumes from people with a culinary school background. Education means they have to pay you more and they don't want to do that. Also, nothing from culinary school translates to actual kitchen work. Only go to culinary school if you have actual work experience in the industry and you're going for a head chef or sous chef position that might actually require classical technique. My favorites: just don't be depressed. Or just get a job. Buy a new car. You can afford the payments. Don't put others in front of your needs. In general, yes. Don't make yourself a pushover. But man, every relationship, even just friendships, need sacrifices. It's a question about balance and who is or isn't worth sacrificing for. My therapist told me that the only way to solve my problems was to be dead. I was there for depression and suicidal thoughts. Needed to give my newborn baby some water. My mother: don't give him sips of plain water. He won't like the taste. Give him cordial or plain old Ribena. Suddenly all the root canals and cavities I'd had made sense. I had a crush on a man that was married. He flirted with me relentlessly and asked me to meet him for some drinks. Obviously I wasn't super comfortable with that, and asked him if his wife was going to be aware. His response was, "Of course not." Like a dummy I agreed. But the day before I felt really guilty and asked my mom what I should do. She told me to go for it. And for some reason just hearing her say that made me realize how awful this was. I didn't go. I told him he needed to focus on his marriage if he was unhappy and looking elsewhere. They divorced 6 months later. Treat women like garbage. They love it. Dude was an absolute tool. Edit. Yes, he got girls. That doesn't make it good advice. This really shouldn't need to be explained why being a city person is a bad thing. Edit 2. Wow. Some of you guys are doing a great job fighting against the stereotype that men are pigs and assholes who only want one thing. You are doing God's work. That's enough Reddit for me today. Around 2005, my dad lectured me about importance of safe investing. I was 21 and had some $3,000 saved from summer jobs. After some research, I decided to put half of my money in Amazon shares, and other half in Microsoft. Dad tried to convince me about lack of solid foundations in these companies, and then proceeded to invest in solid American companies. Exxon, Philip Morris and Kohl's. He hasn't lost his money, but his ROI is mediocre. Someone once told me, "Don't ever date outside of your race." This was in 2019. That killing my soon-to-be ex-wife would be cheaper than paying for a divorce and alimony. For context, the advice came from a drunk stranger at a bar. He was probably joking. Maybe, hopefully. Either way, I opted against it. When I was a super depressed teenager, my mom would say, "You can choose to be happy or you can choose to be sad. Snap out of it." That was not what I needed to hear at the time. Walk in and hand them your resume. Yeah, no, unsurprisingly, that never worked. All the jobs I've had over the years I got by applying online. Granted, some places do still have "Inquire Within" signs on their storefronts, but most places want people to apply online these days, so walking in with a resume just shows you can't follow instructions. Similarly, call them in a few days to check on your application. Every recruiter I've ever talked to hates it when people call to follow up. If they're interested, they'll call you. Calling them to ask about your application just annoys them and demonstrates impatience. My in-laws were the dumbest people when it came to money and financial planning. When we were in our early 20s and got married, my Phil said to us, "Here is how you buy a house. You stop paying all your bills for about 2 months. Save up that money, and just when the wolves are at the door, put down money on a house." They bought their house at a time where they didn't make you fill out a stack of paperwork 3 feet high to get a mortgage. I looked at him and said, "Are you kidding? That's the dumbest advice you could give your children. Just don't pay your bills for a few months?" "She's out of both our leagues, bro, just drop it." He was technically right, but she didn't seem to care about that. I let that advice get to my head and ended up frocking everything up. She ended up with someone else. That person wasn't my friend who gave me that advice. He was seeing someone else I had already met. One day, I was sitting in my room minding my own business and my dad knocked on the door. I said, "Yes, Father." He said, "Never take unsolicited advice," and walked away. When you're a chronic pain patient and get told, "Do some yoga, it'll be okay." I mined 2 Bitcoin in winter 2015-16. BTC price was less than $300 to $400 back then. My friends knew about my funny little hobby. When the price peaked at $19,000 in December 2017 and was dropping to $6,000, and then even to $3,000, my friends were all advising me to sell it immediately, because it was just a nonsensical bubble that burst. Guess what? I kept them until March 2021 and will be moving to my own apartment debt-free next year. Trust me, now that I look back, I can't remember a single time when trustworthy people have urged me to trust them.